your chair, put up a seat, yeah. Welcome to the Atheist Round Table. We just the dudes that you knew for poking holes in all these fables. Yeah. See, we're just some atheists that got questions like, why does God kill babies with cancer? Hopefully, you can bring some answers. We'll sit back and take notes. Go ahead. Welcome to the Atheist Round Table. Welcome to the Atheist Round Table. Okay. Turn it up, turn it up.
Turn it up, turn it up.
What's going on, guys?
Welcome to the Atheist Round Table. It's a Friday night call-in show. And I got two of the homies with me. So it's your boy Oz, and I got Shane the Skeptic, and I got Bryce Aroni. What's up, gentlemen?
Doing good, doing good. I'm excited about this. This is the first time I've actually done the I think this is the first time I've done the TART call-in. So
it is.
Oh, yeah.
It is. Welcome.
It's nice. It's my second time. I was here last week. Had a great time. Took some calls. Eddie was one of our callers, Eddie Kroom from Brute Facts Podcast. Shout out to Eddie Kroom. Had a good conversation between him and myself, Oz, and Biddy Buddha. It was a great discussion. And I'm just glad to be able to be on a call-in show again. I like taking callers.
Yeah, son. Yeah, son.
And we like you on the call-in shows.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You have a lot of fans. It's funny because this is the first time we're actually ever verbally and visually interacting with each other real time. We've only ever met in text. So,
right.
This is fun. And
like live chat at that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, but we're actually able to work as a team today. That'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully we're able to get very different perspectives and we don't have just the same stuff to offer. But sometimes that's just inevitable depending on what you get to work with. Yeah,
I didn't even really think about that until you just said it. And now I'm trying to recall back to a lot of the times that we've interacted to see just how many things I've agreed with you about. So
right.
I'm sure there'll be some maybe we'll take different paths.
Yeah.
You two little chatty Cathys, let me get this announcement out of the way and y'all can just keep on going. Okay.
Hell yeah.
So two things that we want to announce quickly here, and the latter we'll start putting some more energy behind here in the next 7 to 10 days, right around there. But the first one, if you were in the Midwest area, we're gonna have the first atheist network group regional meetup. So if you're in the area, you want to drive and hang out with us, it'll be on the 19th at 6 p.m. And it's literally just going to be a meetup. We'll have drinks, play pool, virtual golf. I forget what all's there, but and just a bunch of secular atheists, God-hating, demon-worshiping people, having some fun and building relationships. And I don't know about you guys, but after a year of COVID, I'm ready to do human things again.
Yeah.
I concur.
So now that I'm vaccinated, I'm like trying to travel everywhere.
Yeah, so that'll be good. And then we're still working on the flyer. So hopefully by the next show we do live, I'll have the flyer for it. But the big one, the grandpappy of the events, I would put it in your calendar if you want to be there, because we have some awesome names already committed to the event to be speakers, do some Q&A, and I'm pumped. But on the 28th and 29th of August here in Fort Wayne, we're going to have a 2-day event, and it's going to be, the entire event's going to be based on it's going to be called Better. Just one word, better. How do we help each other become better humans through having better conversations, learning how to build bridges, whether it's people that hold a different belief, whether it's racial divides, whether it's economical divides, things like that. How do we better those conversations to where those it's not a bloody war, every time those conversations come up. So I plan on being there. Tickets and prices and all that will be out probably, like I said, the next 7 to 10 days. I've been working hard on that with the rest of the team, and I can't tell you enough. You guys already know our team kicks ass, but it's been amazing to watch them really step up and start helping with this. So I'm super grateful for the folks we have involved. But you're not going to miss that. So again, August 28th and 29th, it will be in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We're still working on the venue, but the venue that we have in mind is badass. It's badass.
Nice.
But we'll have that. We'll have some fundraising things for the community to be able to get involved in, and you'll receive things in return for helping us. It won't just be, hey, throw us some money and get nothing in return. We're working on some things to throw back at you. So be watching, be listening, because we'll have more details to come. But to say I'm fucking pumped is a severe understatement. But
I hear it. No, I'm honestly, because I saw that there was something, or potentially some kind of June meetup that I probably won't make. But once I heard you start saying there's something in August, I was starting to think, okay, maybe I'll figure that out. Maybe I'll try to head down, meet some of these Tartians.
That's where all the cool kids are going to be, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, August 28th to 29th. But yeah, we'll get more details out of there. But it's going to be awesome time. I'm getting, as the days pass, I'm getting more and more excited the more things are developing. So I'll shut up now, and I'll drop off here, and we'll get the phone lines going. So if you want to call and talk to Shane and Bryce about your God, your belief, why you believe, what is your evidence, 260-225-3868.
Tartians, is that what we're called?
That's what I've seen. So I'm repeating,
okay.
or I've read anyway.
Not Tardian.
Not Tardian, unless that's how people are pronouncing it. I've only seen it spelled. I haven't heard it pronounced. So I hope it's Tartians rather than Tardians.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. We'll figure it out as we go along.
Right. No, I'm glad to be on here, checking out the chat. I'm sure somebody will call in eventually. We'll get something, hopefully, separate from the Pascal's wager type of argumentation.
I don't mind taking those. I mean, I don't mind taking anything.
Right.
I think that some are demonstrably easier to defeat.
Definitely.
Pascal's wager is such a failed.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that anyone believes on Pascal's wager. In fact, I don't. I don't think anyone came to a God belief with Pascal's wager as the thing that convinced.
So I would say that it doesn't work as an initiator of a belief, but it works as a sustainer of a belief. So
to keep you trapped in it.
Yes. So it would never convince you if you didn't already believe it. But if you start out with the belief, like if you grow up raised theist, then it could actually be really effective. And a friend of mine who might actually end up joining the live chat later, a friend of mine that I actually deconverted had, what were we talking about?
Pascal's wager.
Yes, I got distracted by the chat. I'm sorry. So we were talking one day, and he straight up, I was talking about Pascal's wager, and he was like, "What's that?" And I described it to him, and he was like, "Yeah, that's why I believe." And I'm like, "Okay, think about that." First of all, then you give the argument of there being more options than because Pascal's wager presents theism and atheism as though it's binary, as though it's either the Christian God exists or no God exists. There's no room for a polytheistic council or some monotheistic deity that's simply not the one that they believe in. It's always, what about these two options? And it's like, well, no, if you actually really narrow it down, you'll find that there's an infinite number of squares to add to that chart. And
are Christians aren't the only ones who use Pascal's wager, are they?
No, not
Muslims
at all.
will do this as well.
Yes.
I believe. And so then my answer to them is usually, since they're all believing in just one more God that I'm believing in, the chances that they've picked the right religion. There's so many God beliefs, and there's so many different versions of hell that could be the real one. The chances of you getting into your heaven are much less than you getting into someone else's hell. So you're in the same boat that I am.
Right.
You're a theist, so it really doesn't make any sense.
Right. And then my biggest problem is that your standard of evidence should not be so low that threatening you with some consequence that happens if you don't believe it, and then offering a reward if you do believe it. For me, that actually, the kind of provokes more skepticism from me.
That
I'm already a little bit like, okay, well, it just kind of sounds like you're trying to manipulate me into thinking what you think. It doesn't sound like you're posing an argument. It seems like more of a psychological manipulative tactic.
It doesn't sound like an argument a God would make. It sounds like an argument a man
Right.
would make to convince another man to behave in a certain way.
Right. And well, that's one of my problems with just the idea of theism is so many of these arguments are so bad that it's like, okay, I just feel like an all-knowing, all-powerful deity would have a better argument than any of the arguments I've been presented with if it actually wanted to convince me. It seems more like you think this is the case and you want, and some people will not really deny that. They'll go, yeah, it is the case that this is just my belief. But I think a little over 50% of theists that I interact with would say that they know a God exists and talk about God's existence as though it's already granted. And it would look something like that guy. He's white. He has a beard.
Yeah, it's so they actually say that they know that a God exists.
Yeah, and that's what's really weird to me, because I feel like even if you're theist, the existence of God, it's just like one of the first things that comes to mind. It's like, what's a belief? That is a thing you don't know, but you believe. If I was theist, I feel like God. That's the first thing I could think of. Believe it, don't know it.
Yeah,
but
I think it's something that they've trained themselves to say, and it's possible they even believe that to be correct. But
yeah.
I think if they studied that out more, because as soon as you ask the question, how do you know?
Right.
Then they're in the position of providing something that they're going to call evidence that turns out to not be, or they're going to appeal to personal revelation, and then if it's personal revelation, how do you know that your revelation is revealing of what it seems to be? How have you tested it? Can you test it? And you can't,
right?
Really, how do you know that the voice in your head is God and not just you?
Right. There's a few things that just make it completely. I don't know. There's some argumentation that's just bizarre to me. Like when people say that they know, and sometimes it's good to. One of the good things about getting in online communities of atheists, and I know this might sound bizarre, but I guess it's good for some of us to see irrational atheists and see them make almost the same kind of argumentation. Like, when they start going the hard atheist route and they say that I know there isn't a God, and you try to get them to explain how they know it, and they also don't have anything coherent to say. They generally give something to the effect of the black swan fallacy. And it's like, no, you don't know that there isn't a God. It's just not plausible that there is one. Seems highly improbable. It's an imaginary idea that somebody came up with, and nobody's ever given us any reason to think that it's more than just an idea they come up with. You can come up with an idea, of course, and then it happens to correspond to reality, and later you find evidence of it. That happens, but
now I don't know how you feel about this, because you just mentioned the hard atheists and how they obviously have a burden of proof that they have to meet, just like the theists do. I actually consider myself a hard atheist with respect to certain gods.
Oh yeah, so I would always agree when you add that at the end of the sentence, with respect to certain gods. Mm-hmm. So like I wouldn't say I know there isn't a God. I would say that I know that Yahweh doesn't exist.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and you can know that. Go ahead. What's your reason?
Well, the same way I know a bachelor is an unmarried man, I know that because that is what that entails, right? Like that's what that word means. It's like tautological. When we follow the laws of logic, when you propose a being, whether it's the creator of the universe or not, actually, and a lot of people get stuck on this. It doesn't even have to be the creator. If you posit a being which is both omnibenevolent and omnipotent, it is incompatible with any reality in which anything bad exists. Suffering, like our experience of it, is by definition bad. It's like the best example of what's badness, suffering. Like that's what I could think of. So when people talk about the argument, the problem of suffering or the problem of evil, A lot of theists like to call it an appeal to emotion because they're misunderstanding the argument. They think that we're saying like, oh, bad things happen, so there can't be a God. That's not it at all. It's if you're positing a being which has the ability to do anything and is all good, then it would not follow from that suffering exists, and yet it does.
Right. And in the theist defense, some atheists do use that as the emotional argument. The ones that you were just talking about before,
Right.
who make bad arguments. There are atheists who make bad arguments.
Make it that way.
And the reason they're an atheist is because they've read the Bible and God is evil. You know,
Correct.
The moral argument is not an argument against Christianity, it's not an argument against theism. It may be an argument against Christian claims, but it doesn't, what if there's an evil God? You're just assuming that God must necessarily be benevolent because this one religion says so. But that doesn't do anything to tell you that an evil God doesn't exist or the deceptive demon.
And it's so where people are unable to conceptualize gods other than the one that they believe in. And you'll get this even with former theists when they say things like, when you go, well, what if it couldn't do that? Like, what if it wasn't all powerful? And they go, then it wouldn't be God. I'm like, no, I'm saying if it was a God that didn't have that trait, like what if it was all powerful but not all good? They go, it wouldn't be God. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, so you're not only presupposing that a God exists, but you're also presupposing each of those omni traits as well. So
yeah, what they've done is they've defined God as the omni traits, and anything that you propose that doesn't have them, they don't call it God. Somebody else might, like a Hindu might call that God, or some other religion.
Right.
But if you've defined God in your head already as having the properties of the omni attributes, then anything that fails to meet that standard doesn't count as a God, whether it exists or not. So I think that's probably what their argument would be. And that's fine because I don't like to straw man people. I'm fine to call, whatever God the person is proposing is the God that I'm prepared to argue.
Right. So if they ever reject any of those traits, then I go, okay, well then the problem of suffering does nothing for your God. I tell them like right away, like the problem of suffering only defeats your God if your God is claimed to be omnipotent and omnibenevolent. If you have a God that doesn't have either of those traits, then I agree with you. The problem of suffering, the problem of evil, it doesn't do anything for your God. The problem is you're proposing a God that does have those traits. And then we could actually go a step further and say omnipotence itself gives us too many paradoxes to really make any sense of. And of course,
omniscience is not compatible with free will.
Exactly. And that's a huge problem that they face too. And you can watch them try their damnedest to try to justify there being a God who knows what you're going to do. So in order for it to be the case that a God knows what you're going to do, there has to be what you're going to do. That has to exist, and God has to know what it is. If God knows what it is, it's already true. You can't do otherwise. There's nothing you could do if God already knows you're going to do it. You cannot do something different. But I think
that argument applies to him as well, because presumably an all-knowing God would know everything that he's going to do, which would eliminate his own free will. If he can see in the future,
that's true as well. But then they would
have no choice.
Yeah, if he could see the future and the future is such that he will do this, then what he will do already is the case, and therefore he can't do otherwise.
Right. He's stuck in his own. So that rules out the other omnipotence, right? Because he can only do what he is destined to do. He has no free will.
The funniest thing about omnipotence, though, is that the theists, what I've been getting lately, is their way out of it, their attempt to get out of it anyway, is they try to redefine omnipotence and tell you that that's what you're doing, actually. But they try to say, well, actually, by omnipotent, we don't mean literally the ability to do anything. Because I know the arguments are seen as stupid and cringeworthy, but when you ask the arguments like, could God make a rock so heavy he couldn't lift it? Could God microwave a burrito so hot he couldn't eat it? Those are actually valid questions that prove you have to take either the former or the latter. And in either case, you're proposing that God could not do something.
Right.
And
the reason they've modified what omni means is because of those questions.
Right. And then here's my favorite part. This is my favorite move. This is what they're doing recently. It's a little bit newer, I think, or at least in my experience. So they redefine omnipotence to mean God is able to do anything within his nature. And then and they think they just got out of it, right? And if you actually think about what that entails, okay, God can do everything within his nature. So you've now defined omnipotence in such a way that not only every living organism, but everything is compatible with that definition.
Yeah, I'm
fucking
omnipotent.
flower is capable of doing everything within a flower's nature.
Mhm.
I could do everything within my nature. It's tautological to say it. I can do everything I can do. So you're just defining omnipotence to mean, oh, God can do everything that God can do. Okay, but
Yeah.
you have to admit there have to be some things that he can't do. And a lot of theologically inclined theists will say, well, of course, there's some things God can't do. God can't lie. He can't go against his own nature. And I think about it, I'm like, okay, but if you're saying he can't lie, you already have a God who's incapable of doing something that I'm capable of doing.
Looks like we have a phone number.
Oh, we got a phone number? Oh, we'll call out the phone number. Oh, he's saying to for those.
Yeah.
No, I might be misunderstanding. Yeah, he was saying announcer number. So remember to call in. If you could call in 260-225-3868. Tell us why you believe in a God. We will be...
We're such noobs.
We will be civil as always. Yeah, they could overlook it.
Yeah, I would love someone to... So what are your favorite type of theists to talk to? Because there are some that have the more outlandish, ridiculous arguments. Some that have come with arguments that you've heard over and over and over again. It's like, how many times do we have to debunk this? And then there are some that come with, very rarely, newish ideas where they have a different interpretation that doesn't sound quite as outlandish, but usually they're still appealing to, personal intuition and personal revelation. So,
honestly, like having so much experience with the theists who just haven't thought about what they believe or why, having so much experience with like dishonest interlocutors, whether they be dishonest with me or simply with themselves. Recently, having the few discussions that I've had with Eddie Kroom and like being able to schedule more in advance, I'm more interested. I hope I could find other interlocutors that are similar, where they're, inclined philosophically speaking,
honest,
and they study,
honest.
they study theology. They know what they're talking about. They've actually investigated why they believe what they believe. Because some people, you could talk to them and tell, like, they're not genuinely even asking themselves, right? Like, they know what they want the answer to be, and what they're doing is they're trying to justify the answer that they want to be the case as best as they can. As to where I'm the person who, if there's evidence for a God and it's presented to me, like, I'll be the first to say it. I'll go, okay, there's a God. And then I have to work my other philosophies out from there. Like, now what do I think about free will and objective morality? They'll probably be about the same in views, but
I wouldn't be surprised if many, possibly even up to half of the theists that call in to shows like this are doing it to convince themselves more so than the other person.
Right. Well, then
sometimes I think people need to talk something out and use arguments that they think would be convincing.
Yeah. Sometimes you process in talking about something. And I'm actually coming from a position where I won't say it isn't my goal to change minds or deconvert people, because I do want to do that. And I'm always very happy to find out that I've had anything to do with anybody's deconversion. But I never expect to deconvert my interlocutor. And I always hope that they aren't expecting to convert me, because a lot of the time, if I talk to someone out here in Texas who's just kind of a regular old redneck, they don't know much, and they're trying to talk to me about God, the confidence they have of like, okay, so you say you're an atheist, and they're like, okay, but you haven't talked to me yet. It's just, there's such a confidence that they have that they're gonna convert me, that they're really shocked and disappointed when I'm not remotely convinced and have a response for everything they have to say. So I always want to not be anything like the people that I dislike, right? And I don't ever want to annoyingly try to the way some people would see it if they were theists, force my atheism on them, but if I could talk to somebody and I could go, okay, let's accept it at the beginning of this conversation, it's most likely the case that neither of us is going to change our minds. So with that in mind, what are some other subset goals we could have? And my goal has become more focused on getting them to understand my position and me understanding theirs. And, it's like when I talk to Eddie about morality, it's like, and I have the same problem with with other atheists who believe in objective morality. I feel like when I talk to people about being a moral subjectivist, they pretty much think that I'm a moral relativist because they don't know the difference. And I was just
thinking about that earlier today. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I had it wasn't an official debate, but it was a informal debate where the person I was talking to kept contrasting moral objectivity with moral relativism.
Yes.
And this was like a couple of years ago when I didn't know the difference. So I was just kind of agreeing with him just to advance the conversation. And then, of course, I took a class on cultural anthropology and learned what moral relativism actually was.
But anyway, it looks like Oz is going to come in and do an intro and give us a call. So excited. Come on out, Oz.
I would say come on down, but it's not my show.
Come out wherever you are.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Right. So first off, we have Sunny joining us.
Hey, Sunny.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing good.
Cool.
Sounds like a pretty good show you have going on.
Well, it'd be better if people called in, because, Shane and I will just sit here and mostly agree with, I'm going to say 94% of what each other are saying. But we want to actually interact with people who have different beliefs and figure out why.
Yep, we have, and so everybody knows. Normally, Sunny will have her face up here on the screen with us, but she's right in the middle of a move, so she just got her phone. But she will be here, so don't forget about her. Just because, and we do have a phone call, so you should be. Well, make sure it's plugged in. All right, caller, if you there, you're live with Shane, Bryce, and Sunny.
Come on. If you there, you're live with Shane, Bryce. Come on. If you there, you're live with
Echo.
Yeah, it looks like we're just getting an echo.
Yeah, it looks like we're just getting an echo.
Okay, if you have whatever you're playing the show from, could you turn the volume on low or on mute so that we don't get feedback?
Oh, am I on now?
You're on now. Hello.
Oh, okay, great. It wasn't coming up on the phone there.
Yep, no, that was just so you guys know, that was Google's fault. I unmuted him on this end.
Okay.
The reason Google had him muted, but there you go.
Who do we have the pleasure of talking to?
Oh, well, it's straight for pay. But I guess you guys were talking about earlier is like, do people really believe this when they say this?
Mm-hmm.
And I have some thoughts about that, because like a lot of times, I've recently been talking to Christians. I'm like, what's your evidence for that? And they'll say, the look at the trees argument. And I think what ends up happening in these circles is that you repeat this stuff over and over and over again. You repeat this stuff like atheists can't have morality. You can only have morality from God, which absolutely doesn't make any sense. And you repeat that over and over and over again to the point where you just think it's just a fact. It's just a fact, It depends on the person, of course.
Yeah, it does. But it's no, you're right about that. Some people, they have this idea, and like you said, they've repeated it to themselves so many times, they've just kind of reiterated it and really solidified it in their brain that God is where morality comes from, and therefore if you don't have a God, you don't have any morality. And then when you, as an atheist, present your justifications for morality, and you go in depth and you go in detail and you go, here's what morality is, here's how it works, here's how we could arrive at it, you give the best explanation you can, and look, it has nothing to do with God. I just gave you all that for morality. Then we had metaethics, then we had ethics, we talked about all of this without referring to a God. And they just go, yeah, but what standard? and they just have to go, yeah, but God is where it comes from. And it's like, but I just kind of demonstrated, like, even if a God existed and a God was a source for morality, that doesn't have to mean necessarily that it must be the only source of morality. So it doesn't mean that you should be able to just dismiss every other moral-based system.
Yeah, and the design argument, I don't understand how people are convinced by this either. This sounds like I heard Ray Comfort use this argument, and people like him. And it's almost like the argument that you have to hear someone else make before you just adopt it.
Yeah, well, I would say depending on how badly they make it, because I mean, even as a Christian, I probably would have thought that banana argument was pretty fucking stupid. But this is
the one that the banana is genetically
he's like, so
humans.
if you hold a banana, if you look at a banana, it's clearly shaped to fit the human hand, which is an interesting fruit of choice, because humans actually crossbred bananas to be that shape, so they'd be easier to hold. So that actually defeats his argument a little bit more. But he's like, look how gracefully it sits over the human hand, and it's like it's even pointed toward your mouth to make it easier to eat.
How convenient.
Which actually kind of entails that God doesn't want us eating coconuts, because those things are pretty fucking hard to open. If you ever try to eat a coconut, that shit's really difficult. You gotta have a machete or something to cut it open.
Well, I also think, as far as the collar, I don't know your name, I didn't catch it, but as far as the collar goes, you're encountering this a lot with a lot of different theist, and I think each theist is coming at it from a different perspective. So you're in your perspective, you're having to say those arguments over and over and over, but each person that you're talking to is hearing them for the first time, and so you don't know just how you are impacting a person. It sucks for us because we're, like you said, we're repeating the same things over and over. But a lot of these theists have not heard those arguments before. We're meeting them one at a time. And they're not listening to the same shows that we're listening to. They're not reading the same books we're reading. So we're having to repeat the same crap over and over just because they haven't gone to the same places that we've gone to.
Right. I agree. I just wanted to say one thing. Aunt Jara in the live chat said, "Look at the pomegranate. It's not perfectly designed for consumption." I was actually, I would say that if there's a God who designed pomegranates that way, fuck that guy.
He's an evil God.
what like whoever designed pomegranates it's a sick fucking joke. It's so good. I could barely get any of the part that I like. No, but I would say in respect to what she just said, what Sunny just said. That's absolutely correct, and it's easy to get sick of the arguments and lose patience for the arguments when you hear them again and again and again and again. And that's why sometimes it's good to take a break from having the conversations if it becomes too much. But in respect to the honesty aspect of it, I would actually say that I could fully understand why the argument from design would be convincing if you didn't have any understanding of natural selection. Mm-hmm. So,
which in fairness, most of them don't.
Right. So if you like, I always give this example of, and this is like one of the easiest examples to give in evolution. If you look at birds like finches, they all have differently shaped beaks. And you start to see that the bird that eats seeds has a beak that's shaped in such a way that it's convenient and effective at cutting seeds open. And you see that this bird over here eats nectar, and it has a long beak that's actually really good for getting nectar. And the bird that eats this has a beak that's really shaped in a way that makes it effective for this. You look at the beaks and you go, well, clearly that beak was designed for that food. Like, it looks like something was looking out for them. Whatever gave them these beaks had an idea of what it was doing. And if I had no understanding of natural selection, that would be a compelling argument for me. I would go, no, these were clearly designed. But, you know, that's the thing about having an understanding of natural selection, is it just completely defeats that argument.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess maybe just to be clear, I'm not really complaining about anybody making these arguments. I'm trying to kind of unpack them and understand why do people keep making these arguments over and over again? Why do they keep repeating them? Why, what's the reason for it? Do some of them really believe it? And I think a lot of them don't believe it.
I think some of them probably do. I think a lot of the ones who were indoctrinated from a young age maybe asked a question or a similar question when they were a kid, and then their parents gave them a simplistic answer like that. And if you grow up with that, and that's the thing that convinced you when you were young, especially before you learned reasoning, before you learned critical thinking, which a lot of people never learn when they're an adult, you know?
Yes.
So that's the type of thing. So a lot of them do believe it. They think that that's a convincing argument. And it's like Sonny said, a lot of them have never actually heard the counter arguments to that,
Right.
which
So,
you would have to get from.
Yep.
always try to observe, like, per each individual interlocutor. Once you provide them with the counter arguments, where do they go from there? Do they just dismiss your rebuttals, or do they genuinely address them and go, okay, well, here's what he said? Because some theists will actually address the argument honestly and will agree with you. Oh, you know what? You're right. That argument actually doesn't work. That's actually a pretty bad argument. And when you get that kind of interlocutor, you're lucky. But it really depends.
A lot of times you end up with emotional people react in emotion because you've made a good counter argument, something that they haven't considered. They don't have a good comeback for it, but they still want to believe what they believe. So they're kind of stuck. So then emotions start playing in, and then they don't engage. They don't even consider it. Because, go ahead.
That's typically where they do the Stalin. You know, they go, well, atheism leads to Stalinism.
Right. And then if you go, okay, does Christianity lead to Nazism? What about Hitler? And they're like, they either don't have a counter argument, or they say, well, no, he was an atheist. It's
the no true Christian.
The no true Christian. It's like, okay, wait, are you saying that having examples of atheists and them doing bad things is a sufficient reason to think that atheism causes people to do bad things, which, by the way, is irrelevant of whether or not it's true? If that's the argument, then would you say that if Christians did those same things, that it would be a good reason to think that Christianity caused people to do those things? Well, no, that's not. And then, like he said, no true Christian. And that's a get out of jail free card that we atheists don't have, because if you as an atheist go out and do some morally repulsive thing, I can't turn and say, well, he's not really an atheist if he did that, because the fact that you don't believe in God is irrelevant of you doing that. So
yeah, the difference between atheists and theists in that are most of the theists are arguing for an objective morality. So they're tying morality in with their theistic belief. That's not so for atheism. Atheists can have most of us recognize subjective morality. There's a few that are moral objectivists, but a lot I would say are moral subjectivists. And because of that recognition, it doesn't matter what anyone else, what their moral code is. That doesn't necessarily mean it's yours, you know?
Yeah.
By the way, just for clarification, having subjective morality or any kind of moral system doesn't guarantee that people will behave in accordance with that system.
That's a good point to always make. You could have the best moral system ever and simply not act in accordance with it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's very clear if you look at like what the Christians did to the Americas by wiping out entire populations. Obviously, there's no advantage of a theistic or Christian morality over an atheist morality, I guess, or a secular or whatever.
And this is straight for pay, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I thought so.
Okay. All right. Well, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the last point I was piggybacking on was the fact that just because people have a moral system, whether you're calling it objective or subjective, whatever your system is, that's just the thing that you're using to help you differentiate between right and wrong actions. That doesn't mean that you're going to follow them. It doesn't even mean the people who hold to that belief system or that moral system are following them. So pointing out to someone else's moral failure doesn't mean that we don't have a moral system. It just means that they're not living up to it usually.
But yeah, with all that said, it looks like we should probably get to wrapping it up to take another call. But did you have anything else you wanted to add before we headed out?
No. Go ahead and take the other call. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for calling in. It was a good talk.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, you too.
All right, late.
We'll see him in the chat in the future, I'm sure. He's
Yeah.
a recurring guy.
All right, and then hopefully we
So-
still have the other caller on hold.
Do we have another caller?
Perhaps not. I mean, we had him on hold for a minute, maybe.
He said,
Maybe-
screw you guys.
Yeah, or
Well-
maybe we weren't able to get him on hold. I don't know.
While we're waiting for that, I mean, one thing that I kept thinking of while that caller was on and you guys were having your discussion is how a lot of the people that I engage with on a daily basis, they don't think about things in the way that we think about them.
Yeah,
They internalize their viewpoints as it's a part of their personality. It becomes a part of who they are. And so if you question things and you start challenging them, they take it as a personal attack against them,
yeah,
and they're thinking about their sense of morality tied in with their beliefs. They don't see them as separate things. They see them completely tied in because that's what they've been taught.
right.
And so I think that's an important thing when we talk with people. We have to understand that they're looking at things from a totally different perspective. They're looking at it as a part of who they are versus just an ideology or a belief.
Correct.
Sonny has a degree in psychology, I believe. So
Yeah.
Oh, really?
she
Okay.
knows. Yeah, she knows what the hell she's talking about.
Yeah.
in this area. And people's idea of God and morality was when they're tying morality to the God belief that they have. Oftentimes, it's a reflection of their own belief. God thinks whatever they think. Right. Everybody's version of God is what they would actually do if they were God.
Correct.
Exactly.
Which is why they're all different.
Yeah.
Right. It's even interesting when Christians go against Christians. Like, because I see that a lot where someone calls out another Christian saying, well, you're not acting Christ-like. And the other one is actually being probably more biblically based. But the other one is kind of interpreting things in their own viewpoint. And it can cause a whole bunch of strife because they're just looking at things from their own perspective. And that can, I just think it's interesting when I see Christians going against Christians in that way.
I do too. It's also, I don't mean, like you were saying, they tie the morality into the theism. And this is why the thought of atheism is so repugnant, is so repulsive, is just so like, wait, you're an atheist? So you think that everyone could just do whatever they want to and it doesn't matter. And
looks like we have another caller.
Oh, hell yeah. It's way better than me rambling.
Hello. You
Hello?
are on the air with Shane and Bryce.
Oh, hi, Shane and Bryce. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
It's the morning time here in Korea. Good, thank you. This question is specifically for Shane because I plan on asking Bryce this one in the morning, so because he's coming on my show.
Okay.
So, so Bryce, you can think about this and answer it in the morning as well. But since your name is Shane the Skeptic, what do you think that the biggest tool that the skeptic has? Because I am a Christian myself, but I see a lot of Christians falling for things that I think they just don't understand proper lines of reasoning. And
Right.
so, I grew up in a very charismatic household where we just saw some really crazy stuff growing up. And then I've seen so many Christians falling into this like right-wing QAnon, conspiracy theory stuff. So
Yeah.
since that's the name, I just want to ask you, what's the number one tool we can use as skeptics?
I think
Any other advice?
Yeah, so I think the skeptic's number one tool is the Socratic method. It doesn't have to be, if you learn about what street epistemology is, it doesn't have to be exactly that. But are you familiar with the Socratic method?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if you approach people with questions to kind of get them to point out the answers, to kind of point out their own beliefs and their own contradictions, then it's a lot less confrontational than if you tell them that they're wrong about something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start asking somebody why they think something, then you're a lot more likely to get through to them than you are if you confront them and tell them that they're wrong. So one very mild, easy example that I gave, actually earlier today, is if you're talking to somebody and they have they're a Blue Lives Matter supporter, and you talk to them about, you know, their problem with Black Lives Matter, and you ask them what's their problem with Black Lives Matter, and they say the problem with that movement is that people are saying that only Black Lives Matter. So then you ask them, when you have that flag that says Blue Lives Matter, do you mean that only Blue Lives Matter? They'll say no. Then you ask them, what is it that you mean when you say Blue Lives Matter? And what they'll tell you is that they think that blue lives, and then you could talk about what that even means. But you could tell, they'll get to the point where they say blue lives are being unfairly targeted. And you say, so you ask them, instead of telling them that they're making a contradiction, you say, so what you're telling me is that when you say Blue Lives Matter, that doesn't mean that therefore non-blue lives don't matter. And then you can point out, okay, well then wouldn't it also follow that Black Lives Matter doesn't have to mean non-Black lives don't matter? And this point remains valid whether you're a Black Lives Matter supporter or not. Like, it's just pointing out the contradiction between that view.
Right.
And you don't want me to
By the
answer,
way,
right?
I think blue lives. Oh, I do want you to ask her. Answer. Maybe you can give a follow up to that. But I'm gonna. We do have a lot of questions to ask on that one tomorrow.
Okay.
Because yeah, you know, my problem is as I said, I'm Christian. The problem is that I went to secular. You know, at first I started off as I went to Bible college my freshman year. I dropped out. I became an atheist. Then I went to a secular school and I got, you know, a degree in political and history, political science and history. Then I went back to Bible college, and so I had like the, you know, a philosophical background. So when I went back to Bible college, I was just tearing apart their arguments because none of them knew how to argue and reason, because it was just, oh, the Bible says this, and we just got to blindly go along and accept it. Our professors say this, so don't question them. You know, so it was just very frustrating because you would hear people making a lot of fallacious arguments. And it's just very troubling for me as a Christian now that so many people just blindly go along, like, you know, blind faith going along with that. It concerns Christians who can think as well. So thank you for that. Do you have any else? Maybe a number two?
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Yeah, do you have anything else? Like any last
yeah, well, actually, so before you headed out, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same terms. What do you understand the Socratic method to be, just so I can make sure we share an understanding of the method?
So it's when you're trying to find, like, you're basically trying to get to the underlying, you keep asking questions and trying to think of, like, how to disprove something, to, how do you call it? Trying to find every possible contradiction to something, and just keep reducing it down to its lowest common denominators.
Okay. Sort of, yeah, using questions to point out contradictions and inconsistencies rather than approaching with any confrontation. Before you go, I just wanted to ask Sunny if you had anything you wanted to add to the discussion.
Well, I was just thinking about how you were talking about how you're a Christian, and a lot of the Christians that you're around tend to go with the that type of a ideology that doesn't necessarily suit your same viewpoint. And what I want to point out is that a lot of them are getting told from the pulpit, from their preachers, to follow uber conservative viewpoints, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ,
right.
All coming from the pulpit itself. And the congregants tend to go with whatever their pastor is telling them instead of necessarily thinking about it from their own viewpoint. So, like they were saying, using the Socratic method kind of gets them to think about it critically. Because when they're in the middle of church, they're just following what their pastor is saying, and unfortunately, that's what the pastors are saying right now.
Right. Thank you so much for that.
Which, of course, brings up the question of why they're saying it.
which is why what?
It raises the question of why the pastors teach it that way, you know?
Yeah, you know what? I don't understand it because I guess what happens is they maybe infer some stuff from the Bible. And so when you infer it, then what winds up happening is you think that you got to go along with the consequences of that. For example, like saying that the earth is 6,000 years old. Well, that's nowhere in the Bible. I mean, I believe in the Big Bang. I believe in evolution and all those things. But if you were to go along with saying that the earth is only 6,000 years old, then by definition, there's no way you're going to be able to accept evolution.
Right.
You know? So that's what I'm talking about. Those kind of things, or being anti-LGBTQ. That's another problem too, is because if you say that the government has to enforce the sexual purity, whatever, well, then why aren't you going after straight people who are promiscuous or people who are cheat on their spouses, you know? So,
or people who get divorced,
to me,
which is like half of the people who get married.
Right.
Yeah, that shows a hypocrisy. And when you point that out, they tend to be very quiet about that. They'll gloss it over, or continue to go back to the specific verses that they're thinking of without really addressing what you're saying. They'll completely ignore what you're saying. It's very difficult for them to face that self-hypocrisy.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to get off now, but I want to thank you guys so much for your time. I really look forward to hearing from you tomorrow, Bryce. I think for more reasonable Christians like myself, I see people like you guys as allies, because we can speak some moderation to some of the more fringe elements of Christianity. And so I really thank you guys for your skepticism, your questioning, because I do the same thing as a Christian.
Awesome.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And I do want to encourage you to check out some, because I guess I don't have time to do so myself, but I could kind of like wear a Christian worldview like goggles and argue that the Bible does support the earth being 6,000 years old. So you should, if you haven't already, familiarize yourself with the arguments for and against young earth creationism, which one's more consistent with the Bible, and see what you arrive at upon looking at both sides of that argument between Christians.
Who's this, by the way?
This is Shane the Skeptic.
Oh, okay, Shane. Yeah, well, if you'd like to come on my podcast, I'd love to talk to you further.
Okay, yeah, I would love to do that because, yes, that would be a great conversation.
Okay, you guys have a great night.
You too.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
That was empathy,
Isaiah,
respect.
Isaiah, quit coming around here and like mooching.
Trying to get everybody on this podcast. That's okay. I think some of that was cultural as well, though. When you're talking about, Sonny, when you're talking about the differences between the different kinds of Christians and why some of them gravitate towards, the right wing Trumpist, for lack of a better word, anti-gay, anti-abortion, and all that. A lot of that is just cultural. They think that they can target certain things because that's just the way that it always has been. But there's a huge difference in Christians that come from the Bible Belt, especially white evangelicals. Like, that's a certain breed of Christianity. But then you have Black Baptists, you have Southern Baptists, you have all these, and they all have different political ideology. And most Black Christians are Democrats, and most white evangelicals are Republicans. So, but they're both reading from the same book.
Right.
Yeah. You even see a difference among Methodist, Protestants, Southern Baptist, Unitarian, Universalist. You see a complete difference in those. But I do think that, right now we're seeing such a major push from evangelical Christians to the pastors pushing that particular ideology that it's at least worth noting.
Yeah, and some of it is power as well, because there's they're very much involved in politics, the evangelicals, and some of that goes both ways. So, a lot of the leaders of the evangelical movement are also politicians, unfortunately. And so the lines get blurred between church and state on that side much more. Well, I shouldn't say much more. It happens on in the other direction as well. But you have clergy getting involved in politics all the time.
And I just wanted to say real quick, Isaiah, when you play this back, I was only kidding. We'll all come on your show. I didn't want. That ended really quick, so it sounded like I was being a dick. We'll all come on and talk to you. So
I'll clarify tomorrow if he's no longer listening, because I'm supposed to be on his podcast tomorrow.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm still, I'm still new to the game, so I'm trying to get myself out there as much as possible, get on as many podcasts as I can. So I'm happy to have found another one to go on.
Yeah. Okay. Who else we got? Anybody else in the queue? I guess one thing that I will be curious to ask him about tomorrow, if it comes up and if I can remember, is how he can defend the LGBTQ community.
Yeah,
and what his interpretation of the Bible is, because
right.
I used to be a Christian, and I defended LGBTQ people. I didn't, as an LGBT person and a Christian at the same time, you kind of have to, right? It's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, but I know what all of my arguments were. And now that I'm an atheist, I know why all of those arguments fail now.
Why they failed.
Curious. Yeah. Yeah. Very curious.
We have, and anyone who has been in Austin wouldn't be surprised that we have this in Austin, but we have churches here that have rainbows on the outside to kind of like let you know we're allies. Everybody's welcome.
I'm in California. I'm in Northern California, the Bay Area. So yeah,
I think it's absolutely great that these communities are being accepting. The problem is they're based off of ideologies that aren't. And I'm really interested in one day maybe going to that church and talking to a bunch of LGBT Christians, being like, hey, one of the problems I have with your religion is that it's mean to you. Like, that's a pretty big deal. And one of the things that led to me deconverting, and I deconverted 4 years. I was raised Catholic. I deconverted 4 years before I became an atheist. But I remember my priest, Father David.
We got one more line.
Oh, we got one? Yeah. Okay, let's go for that if we got a live call.
Sonny, you still there?
I'm here.
All right. Who do we have?
Hey, it's Aunt Kathy.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Aunt Kathy.
Hey. I'm great. I actually have a question specifically for Sonny, but y'all can answer too. I'll listen to what you say.
Let Sonny go first.
Okay.
Okay. Well, when I heard that you had a psychology background, there have been some questions I've had in thinking about the process that people go through in making the change from being a Christian to leaving behind their faith. Do you see, or have you experienced with people actually taking steps to really think through what they're doing? Or do you see more people just saying, well, flip it, I'm letting go of this, it's a bunch of junk anyway, and I'm just going to be an atheist? What are you seeing, and how do you deal with those kinds of things?
So what I see most often, and I actually have some coworkers going through this very thing right now, is that there's usually something that triggers questioning. And once they start questioning, then there's a lot of pushback, an internal pushback, where there's it's like cognitive dissonance, where all of a sudden they tend to go even further into their religious belief for a little while, and then they push back out of it. It's kind of almost like being on a seesaw. And it takes a while to try to figure that part out, because it's not just their mental construct, but it's also their entire history, their family history. They've been told from the time they were young that this is the truth. They're they've been told that going to church regularly is the right thing to do and the moral thing to do. So there's a lot that gets kind of pushed up into that entire worldview. But eventually their doubts supersede. I mean, that's what I see. Their doubts supersede. And then they start asking questions. They start looking for answers. They start asking questions, and they look for people very tentatively that they think they might be able to trust to be able to get those answers. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question effectively, but it's a long process, and it takes, it's very individualized, and each person is going through very specific things, you know, depending on their own backgrounds and their own issues. I mean, I'll just give you an example. One of my friends, a coworker who, she felt that Christianity was real because when her dad died, he had called her and she was supposed to go see him. And when she walked up on the back porch, she didn't see him slumped over. And it wasn't until her husband arrived that she saw him. And she's like, God is the only one who could have prevented me from seeing him because he was right there in perfect view. And I kept looking right in that direction. And it wasn't until she started questioning a lot of other things and questioning people in the church and the way that they were acting about other non-related things that she started going back to that and thinking, is that really a valid reason for me to believe in God? And so then she would come to me and start talking to me. Well, what do you think? And I would say, well, you know, we would just sit down and have very, you know, conversations that were not confrontational, just very, you know, using like what Shane was saying, the Socratic method, asking questions. Well, what do you think? And eventually she was like, wow, I can't believe this. My whole life I've been, you know, taught that this was the way to go and that this was the truth. And now I feel like my whole world is crumbling. And so it, you know, it takes a whole lot of processes and steps to get over all of that, mentally and physically.
Well, that's Oz and I have been kind of sharing some things back and forth about that. And I felt like it's a process. I know I'm going through a process. And I thought, isn't it interesting that to become a Christian, it's an easy thing. You don't think it through. You don't question anything. I mean, I guess you do to a certain extent, but of course, it's based more on feeling. And it's based, I mean, like, I know for myself, it was coming out of a very abusive background, coming into something that was warm and fuzzy. Oh, of course I wanted the warm and fuzzy. You know, I wanted the love and the feel good and all that kind of stuff. And so it was easier to step into that. And then to think about letting go of everything that was involved in that process, even though now that I'm really into the deconstruction part, I'm seeing that I've actually been deconstructing in pieces for years, you know?
You know, can I add to what Sunny just said? This is Kathy.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, when people are in that deconversion process or they're teetering back and forth, as Sunny said, one of the reasons that the doubts tend to supersede their faith is because whatever questions they had that made them question their faith in the first place was never actually resolved. And for emotional reasons, they can try to keep themselves in the religion. But until those questions are resolved, then you're always going to be, you know, teetering. And eventually that's why the doubts start to supersede. Religion is one of those things that oftentimes, you know, the Bible and church and your clergy, they tell you what to think. They tell you what to think. They tell you what to believe. They don't tell you how to think. That's something that you learn when you learn critical thinking. And a lot of people, I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, a lot of people never actually learn that.
Right. And I would kind of add in response to like the original initial question, which was, you know, are there people who arrive at their atheism through rather than deep critical thinking process, sort of dismissing the ideas as being nonsense and going, I don't really want to think about it. And I just do want to say that that absolutely is the case for many people. You have plenty of people who were raised atheist, and when they were presented religions for the first time when they were over 10 years old, they thought, yeah, that sounds silly, and they haven't really thought about it. That exists. You have people who, for their own emotional reasons, everybody has cognitive biases, and if we could address what our biases are, we could then examine how they might be influencing how we reach our conclusions. I would say the overwhelming majority of atheists that I talk to are people who have deconverted from some religion, or at least a belief in God. And most of them got there through asking questions and going through a critical thinking process. I wouldn't deny that there are people who haven't thought very critically and still arrived at the same conclusion as me. That happens, all the time. But I would say that probably the overwhelming majority of people who at least become atheist after having been theist are people who arrived through asking questions and thinking critically.
Well, I know that in my age group, which is over 60, I'm 68. I will just be owning every year.
That's fine. That's a great age.
Yeah,
Well,
that's 68 years young.
Yeah.
And being in the Christian church since, my salvation was at 16. And so that's a lot of years. And to go through the questioning. And yet, as I look back, I can see that some of the questions have been there for years, and nobody would answer them in a way that was good enough for me. So they just kept piling up.
Yeah.
Until finally it was like, okay, I can't do this. I can't do something I'm questioning. I can't stay a part of something when I'm not getting the answers and seeing the things that need to be, my reality now. So I shared with Oz. Feels weird to call my nephew Oz, but anyway, in going through the deconstruction the other day, I just, it comes easy to me to make, what do you call it? When you can use you can use each letter and make like deconstruction. I have a word for D. I have a word for E.
Acronym.
What's that called? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dang it. I always forget that. Anyway, I got this really cool acronym that works for me for my process of deconstruction. And it involves 14 specific actions. And of course, I'm not through all of them yet, but it's just neat how that's how my mind works. That I have to do step by step by step.
Yeah.
And knowing kind of what's the next step.
Right.
I've kind of, with listening to you all and others that I pay attention to, I'm seeing that, okay, this is kind of where I'm at right now. And this is probably what's coming up next because of what I've heard others talk about, but also what I'm feeling within myself.
It sounds to me like you're transitioning from a way of thinking in which you used to start with the ideas and then try to apply logic to them and make them logical. And it sounds a little bit more like now what you're doing is you're starting with the logic and then applying that logic to the ideas and seeing where it takes you. And that's the right way to go. So from someone who's very passionate about critical thinking and skepticism and has been, making a hobby out of talking about it for some time now, I would say that you're asking the right questions, and it sounds like you're using logic the right way. So I commend your process, and I hope you continue as you're going.
Well, thank you. The thing that has really struck me is that in all other areas of my life, pretty much I always applied logical thinking, except for in my religious beliefs.
Right.
And that's most
people. Until the last 6 years. Really? So
that's most religious people that I have encountered.
Yeah, and I can't blame a religious person or anyone else for that matter, because even now that I am aware of all these, epistemological critical thinking skills that I've read about, learned, watched, whatever, some of the beliefs that we developed before our standards of evidence have improved. So sometimes I'll talk about something and I'll say something in conversation, and then I'll realize that I arrived at that belief prior to me gaining the critical thinking skills that I have now. I'll re-examine it and go, oh, wait a minute, I was wrong about that. Because maybe the reason I believe that is because I Googled something when I was 16 and I believed the first answer. And now I have a higher standard of evidence. So when I reconsider, oh, why do I think that? Oh, I thought it because I Googled it once when I was 16. Maybe I should start over. And then I realized that
there's also a lot of fear that's tied up with, psychological fear that is tied up with all that. Just like what Shane was saying, it's not just with, gee, I haven't really thought about those things before. It's also the fact that you've been told by people in authority your entire life, people that you love and trust. And the thought of not having that is a very psychologically devastating and fearful thing. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. And the fact that you're as far along as you are, and the fact that you're thinking about those things, that's pretty awesome. I think you should pat yourself on the back, because there are a lot of people who don't think the way that you do. So I'm very impressed by you. And
Kathy, can I ask you one more quick question? Because we're over time. We're going to have to go in a minute, but I just have to know this. How are you right now? Are you at the point where this is something that is weighing heavily on you, or where it's beginning to look like a little bit more of a relief?
Oh, it's definitely a release. Okay. I think my biggest, it's a concern, and it's how to handle. I'm the one who brought Christianity into my family. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm the one that's questioning, and my family members are still very active. My brother's a pastor, my sister's Oz's mom, and all very active in the church. And now I'm the one who brought them in, and now I'm going out. And it's how to deal with that conflict. I mean, it is a very, I was up with my sister for a few days last week, and my mom lives there. So, I was there to help with mom and stuff. And it's a different atmosphere there for me.
So they're all aware of your position now with respect to your religious beliefs.
They don't know. They know that I've been hanging out with Oz. And that
Oz is a bad influence.
Oz has tainted you.
No, they're afraid that my agreeing with Oz is tainting him more. That I'm feeding into his being something other than what his mother sees.
Contributing to the delinquency of an Oz.
Bullshit.
Of my nephew. Anyway, but I feel more freedom. And the thing that I've told Oz the other day is that I have almost an insatiable hunger to gain knowledge in all kinds of areas. It's like having to live within the box, and you only listen to this kind of music and read these kinds of books and don't watch these kinds of things on the TV, that I'm now constantly filling my mind and my home, different kinds of music, different kinds of books, different kinds of studying. I mean, I've always been a reader, and I'm reading different things, and it's like, just feed me. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry.
Right.
Well, you don't have to pretend that you know everything. You don't have to pretend that you know everything anymore. That's, religion. Everything that you need to know comes from the Bible. Well, now that you've let that go, now you can actually learn things that that you didn't have before.
Another thing that I want to tell you, Kathy, is that you may have brought them into that, but at the time you were doing what you thought was best. And so, you need to look for ways to let that go, because they've made, they're now making the decision to do what they're going to do. They're going to, you can't own that. You know what I'm saying? You have to,
Yeah.
you did what you thought was best. And now that you know better, you're doing better. And all that you can do is the best that you can do. So don't hold on to that. I heard a little bit of guilt in your voice when you were talking about how you
Yeah.
had brought them in and now you're leaving.
Yeah.
And so, that's okay. You did what you thought was best at the time, and that's okay. And it's okay to recognize that and to let that guilt go. You're okay.
Well, see, they were 6, 9, and 15 or 16 when I took it home, and we're all grown up since then.
Yeah.
So,
But they're grown now,
so different.
right?
Yeah, they're grown now. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So they have the opportunity to learn as much as they want to, or as little as they want to.
Yeah.
Just like
And
you.
something that might help you feel better is if you helped introduce them to the ideas of Christianity and theism, introduce them to critical thinking skills and some of the things you're interested in. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily with the goal of deconstruction or deconversion. I mean, that could be some sort of hopeful goal that you have in the back of your head. But if you just try to teach them some critical thinking skills that you learned yourself, then what you could do is you can hope that they'll apply those critical thinking skills to their religious ideas. But even if they don't, they'll be applying those skills to other bad ideas. So you could still help give them tools to help them protect themselves against bad ideas in the future.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, great. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I learned
Thank
so
you.
much from all of you.
You're welcome.
And
Great talk.
have a good night.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
All right. What a great last call.
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
really.
that was
I'm really-
awesome.
Yeah, it was. I was really glad that Sunny went first because I felt like I did a poor job of remembering to I guess remembering that Sunny was there because there's no screen. So I'm like, oh yeah, Sunny needs to talk too. And
I knew that call was going to be for her. So
well, yeah, and also as a psychologist, had the most satisfactory answery of the three of us, in my opinion, at least. So
that was by design.
Thanks, guys.
that was a great call.
So
Well, I'm glad you guys let me come in. I kind of came in a little bit late, but I appreciate you guys letting me come on in.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I think I think we don't have any more calls, so we will be going on Discord for
and
I'm
gonna get help from my friends on the Atheist Network group on figuring out how to fucking use Discord.
If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Okay, because dude, I get on Discord and I'm like, there are old people that I know that know how to use this shit, and I feel like a 75-year-old or 80. No, I'm gonna go with 90-year-old trying to figure this out. I'm like, dude, what is this? There's channels and then sub whatever. They'll help me out, so we'll get on Discord. You guys could hit us up.
Shane, if Darth Dawkins can live on Discord, by every possible experiment that we could run, you have to be able to get on Discord.
I was unrelated. I no longer will be on Discord. I have been persuaded out of it.
You taking us out, Oz?
Yes, I am. So this is not the official one, but this might be something where some people might want to go screen grab it because if they're have an ADHD brain like mine, they need the visual and something to go back and maybe take a screenshot of to have it until the official marketing material comes out. But I'll just throw this up there. That way you guys have it if you want to go back to it later. I want to announce it one more time. So August 28th and 29th here in the Fort Wayne, Indiana. We're going to have the first ever, the Atheist Network group. It's going to be an in-person conference. So goodbye, COVID. Goodbye, COVID. And we're going to do human shit with humans. No, not human shit. We're going to do human activities with humans. And it's going to be a great time. And we already have some great names, some unbelievable names already committed to being with us and speaking. So it'll be 2 days full of sessions, breakout sessions, even debates. We're going to have some comedy in there. It's going to be what you're used to, the Atheist Network group, or even the TART shows, and The Bryce is Right and Faith Not Included and the Atheist Troll Call-In Show and Up Lady Date with Nady Date and whatever it is that Murder Shed Steve is working on that he won't tell anybody about because he's a creep. All those things will be represented, plus all the speakers, so you're not going to miss it. The details I want to have out in the next 10 days or so, as far as ticket prices and all that, because obviously we have to cover the cost of the speakers' travel, flights, hotels, and all that. So we'll get all that out, and we're going to have some fun ways to, for the community to contribute if they want to, and when you do, depending on kind of the tier, you'll receive a gift in exchange for your help and your support there. So be on the lookout. That's going to be amazing. And like I said earlier, I can't fucking wait to do this. So before we do wrap it up, well, Bryce, I'll just start with you because we had a caller call in and you're going to be on his show, but you have your shows on Tuesday nights. So if you want to tell us a little bit about that, maybe some things you got coming up with that, and anything else on anybody else's channel before we wrap up.
I mean, I'm super secretive about things I have going up. I like to surprise people, but I will say that, I recently discovered Anthony Magnabosco. I was late to that party and just became a huge fan by binge watching his show. So he's going to be on the show on the 15th. So
wait. Why you keep holding out on me?
I'm not holding out. Oh, you didn't know this? I thought you knew.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest name that I've got coming up. But
yeah, Anthony's a cool guy. I know him personally. He's super.
He called me the other day, just like not out of the blue. It was someone keyed him in, but I just thought that was really nice.
Yeah, me and that person had a little talk. Yes, we did. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But no, thank you. And I'm excited. I'll definitely be tuning in for that one. And then before Sonny, what do you got going on?
I'm working with Bryce on a lot of different shows. I've also been working with Borg Skeptic on some of her shows. So I'm really excited. I'm also very excited to be helping to plan this kind of 2-day conference that you were just talking about. So yeah, we got some cool things going on the show.
Yeah, we get to use Sunny a lot of places. She's very active with us over on Promethean Secular Frontier. She's very active with us over on Bryce is Right, and she's multi-talented, as you can well see, with her psychology background, her comfort in front of the camera, her technical skills behind the camera. She's kind of like a jack of all trades. So yeah, we try to use her whenever we can in a good way.
Yeah, I'm being used in a good way.
Anytime you can have the utility player, I guess one of my bosses used to say, you always need that Swiss knife person on your team that can do everything. You always need that person because there's going to be the one day that it's like nobody else can do this. Oh, I can do that. I got you. Yeah, that's awesome. And then last but definitely not least, Shane the Skeptic.
I don't know about definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, my name's Shane the Skeptic. You can find me I have a Facebook page as well as a YouTube channel under that name, Shane the Skeptic. I just recently started an epistemology series that's mainly dedicated to making epistemology more palatable for people because I'm a nerd. So my thing is I read books and pretend to be smart. But what I'm trying to do now is actually make the ideas that I read about more palatable so that more people could understand the skills that go into thinking and arriving at conclusions. There's also a debunking series and counter apologetics as well, discussion series. So everything to do with critical thinking, I'm all about. So that's me. And I left the link in the chat to my YouTube channel. So go ahead and check that out if anyone sees it.
Yep. And everybody's links will be, I got off work late, so I didn't get to put the description in there, but everybody's links will be in there later. But there's also, if you go to Shane's channel, there's also a show where Shane and I and one of his friends, we were very, very professional and thought out, and we read through Genesis while drunk,
Yeah.
So it was some good shit. No, it was.
That was good. I was actually thinking about it. We got to do another one of those. I was gonna just do Drunk Genesis, where we just it was 3 atheists getting drunk and reading the book of Genesis. But then decided, this would actually make a pretty good series. So I'm actually gonna just do Drunk Bible series, but it has to get going. I got to get in touch.
I'm down for that. You gotta hit me up for that sometime.
We gotta. Maybe I'll see what you guys are doing later tonight. But anyway.
I think we skip. We can come back later. I think we skip ahead and we just go straight to drunk crucifixion.
Well, no, because we ended the stream right before we got to. I think it was right before we got to the ark, right at like chapter 6. And if you're gonna do a drunk atheists reading the Bible series, you can't just skip that flood story. We need to talk about those animals on that ark and how that was going on.
Well, they skip shit all the time. We can too. Fuck that.
Yeah, we could skip plenty, but I don't want to skip the flood. That's my favorite part of the Bible. I'm not skipping my favorite part of the Bible.
Okay, well, it's all about you. It is your show. It can be all about you.
Everything I'm on is all about me, actually. Just in case you didn't know.
And then, hold on.
I'm the most humble person I know.
Aunt Jer, he does have an account. He just doesn't know how to use it. So we're gonna.
Yep. So I'm gonna get some help from them. But yeah, I just don't know how to fucking use it.
Yeah, Javier said, "I believe that God was drunk on Genesis." I agree.
That's actually a pretty good theory once you think about it.
Yeah, he was like Genesis. Oh, I thought it was Guinness. My bad.
I thought it was a Guinness. He misspelled Guinness. He was that fucked up.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for having a great show tonight. Appreciate you guys. And Sonny, thanks for jumping on there last minute and hanging out with us. And,
thanks for having me.
Not a problem. And then, I did forget. So if you're in the Midwest, June 19th is the regional meetup, the first regional meetup for the Atheist Network group. You can come from wherever, but that one's more of a hangout, have some drinks, get to know each other. So if you're in the Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky area and you want to make the drive, we would love to have you. 6 p.m. on the 19th. And the flyers on all of social medias if you need more information. All right. Well, everybody in the chat, thanks for chilling out. We will be on the Discord here in a moment. Well, I say a moment, but we're going to have help Shane get on there. So
you have to help me figure it out.
I can't promise you how long a moment is. And this is TART/Tang. So a moment is that's subjective.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you in a few.
Turn it up. What up? Yeah. Grab your chair, put up a seat, yeah. Welcome to the Atheist Round Table. We just the dudes that you knew for poking holes in all these fables. Yeah. See, we're just some atheists that got questions like, why does God kill babies with cancer? Hopefully, you can bring some answers. We'll sit back and take notes. Go ahead. Welcome to the Atheist Round Table. Welcome to the Atheist Round Table.